Well, these days we're all about reusing and recycling, but apparently the world's military forces missed that update. Whether it's due to conflict, carelessness, missteps, or plain old neglect, there's abandoned military equipment scattered across the globe. The stories behind these forsaken machines and forgotten war tools are often surprisingly compelling. So in this video, we're taking a look at 15 of the most unexpected abandoned military objects out there. Number 15. Berlin Olympic Village. There's no fanfare leading up to this place. Most Berlin locals don't even know it exists, though it once held the world's attention. Built for the 1936 Olympics, this was the first village designed to house athletes during the Games. It had dorms, dining halls, pools, training facilities, everything an athlete could need. It was also a propaganda project, made to show off Germany's so-called modernity under the Nazi regime. Outwardly, it looked like a peaceful rural village, but Hitler's hand was all over it. Jewish and black athletes were excluded from the area, and after the war, it was seized by Soviet forces and used as military housing until 1994. What remains now is a husk. Buildings stripped of their dignity, walls decaying, stories buried beneath rotting wood. It was once called the Village of Peace. Now it's mostly ignored. Weeds grow in the courtyards. Floors creak under the weight of silence. The athletes are long gone, and so is the illusion it was built to sell. Number 14. Stack Rock Fort. There's a solid hunk of stone sitting off the coast of Milford Haven, and it once carried Britain's hopes of repelling a French naval assault, and honestly, it's beautiful. What do you say? That was back in 1852, when Stack Rock Fort was fitted with heavy artillery, and 175 soldiers lived within its round walls. Napoleon III was the threat, and the Brits weren't taking chances. Trouble is, warfare moved on faster than expected. By the end of the 1800s, the fort was already fading into irrelevance. When it was finally decommissioned in 1929, it hadn't seen battle but stood long enough to be labeled obsolete. Since then, it's drifted between film set and real estate oddity. At one point, it even went up for sale, price negotiable of course. The structure's still there, balancing between history and salt spray, with no one left to fire the cannons, and no war left to fight. It's not a fortress anymore. It's a ghost with thick walls and a fantastic sea view. Number 13. K-27 Nuclear Submarine. Dumping a reactor into the ocean was never a good idea, and Russia's K-27 submarine is real-life proof of that. After a reactor failure made it unsafe in the early 80s, the Soviets didn't dismantle it. They dragged it to the Kara Sea and let it sink. No deep trench, no safe depth, just 150 feet below the surface. That was 1981. 40 years later, the salt water's eating through the metal, and every expert who's looked at it says the same thing. It won't hold much longer. The K-27 isn't just a submarine, it's a time bomb packed with radioactive material. If the casing fails, uranium will leach into Arctic waters. The fix? Well, it was pretty simple. Pull that thing up and seal it properly. But that would cost hundreds of millions, and Russia hasn't budged. It sits there, corroding in silence, ignored by the people who put it there. If the sea claims it completely, the fallout won't be just environmental, it'll be political, global, and irreversible. Well, that's a lot. Number 12. Culver Battery. During World War II, the people of the Isle of Wight had more to worry about than just being in the middle of the English Channel. The island's position between England and France made it a prime target for air raids, which is why Culver Battery was called back into action. But its history stretches further than most people don't realize. Built in 1906, the coastal artillery post originally served during World War I, guarding torpedo boat operations. It wasn't just cannons and lookouts. There were living quarters, kitchens and toilets hidden beneath the surface, making it livable for short deployments. After the First War, the site pivoted to weapons testing. Then, when World War II broke out, it resumed guarding nearby docks. By 1942, with the German naval threat fading, its role shrank. It remained technically active until 1956, when the guns were removed and the underground areas sealed off. What remains now is a concrete skeleton on a cliffside. Number 11. Churchill Tank. At the base of Kithurst Hill, there's a tank that's seen better days. The Churchill Mark II, once a symbol of strength during World War II, has been resting there for more than 70 years. Locals call it the South Downs tank. Bullet holes still pockmark the armor. It's believed the Canadian Army used this stretch of land for training, which would explain how the vehicle ended up here. Why it wasn't recovered after the war is still a mystery. Some say it was too damaged to move. Others think it was just forgotten. Either way, the tank stayed put. Over time, it became part of the scenery. Hikers pass it. Children climb it. But its days as a lonely landmark are numbered. A military museum in France has selected it as part of a D-Day memorial. Soon it'll be pulled from the soil and restored for display. After decades of silence, the old machine will roll again, this time not for war, but remembrance. Number D's. Nicosia International Airport. No passengers have boarded a plane here in decades, but the seats are still in place. The shops, the hangars, even the planes on the runway, everything looks like it's waiting for a flight that'll never come. Nicosia Airport once handled thousands of travelers a day. It was built in the 1930s for military use, then transitioned into a civilian hub. That ended in 1974, when a coup staged by Greek Cypriots triggered a full-blown Turkish military response. In the chaos, the airport became a battleground, then a demilitarized zone. It's been under UN control ever since, frozen in time like the conflict that caused it. No commercial flights or renovations, just silence and dust. The structure is cracked and fading, yet eerily intact. Inside, you'll still find terminals, faded signage and control towers that haven't lit up in years. Nicosia's airport isn't just abandoned. It's trapped in a moment, a casualty of unresolved history with no sign of closure on the horizon. Number 9. Pointe du Hoc. The cliffs at Pointe du Hoc weren't just steep, they were brutal. And in 1944, the U.S. Army Rangers were told to climb them. German forces had turned the area into a fortified battery between Utah and Omaha Beach. Their artillery placement was perfect, their defenses carved into the rock itself. It was supposed to hold the line against any invasion, but on D-Day, Lieutenant Colonel James Earl Rudder led his men up those 100-foot cliffs using rope ladders and grappling hooks, under fire the entire time. Against the odds, they took the battery. The mission was brutal, the victory hard-won. That assault became one of the defining moments of the Allied landings. The site hasn't changed much since. Concrete bunkers still sit in silence. Shell craters cover the ground like open wounds. It's been left as it was, as a tribute to the men who scaled a wall of death and made the impossible possible. Nothing there is polished. That's what makes it honest. Number 8. Torpedownia, Gdynia, Poland. A short boat ride off the coast of Gdynia brings you to a building that shouldn't still be standing. Torpedownia was once a cutting-edge torpedo testing site, built by Nazis in 1942 to experiment with underwater weaponry. Back then it was connected to land by a pier, humming with activity. But when Germany lost the war, the Soviets took over, stripped it of anything useful, and left it to the elements. The pier was destroyed, leaving the facility marooned in the Bay of Gdansk. It's been that way ever since. Isolated, rusting, collapsing inch by inch, urban explorers still find their way in, climbing in through jagged edges and torn metal, but there's no official access, no safety, and definitely no guarantees. The floors are unstable, and the walls are corroded, yet it draws people in, part curiosity, part defiance. It's a building built for destruction that has somehow refused to fall. Each year the sea pulls more from it. One storm, one shift in the tide, and it might all vanish. Number 7. Lefranc Artillery Bunkers. Well, if you Google this thing, you'll find nothing but a bunch of stock photos because no one knows much about it. Near Fort Dunes in northern France, this line of World War II-era bunkers built by the Nazis was left to rot until artists stepped in. Originally part of Hitler's Atlantic Wall, these bunkers were declared obsolete by the French military in the mid-1950s and left untouched for decades. By the 1990s, graffiti artists began reclaiming the space. It started with spray paint, but quickly grew into full-scale art installations. Today, some bunkers are covered in mosaic tiles, sculptural wraps, and even mirror panels that reflect the sun in every direction. Each has a unique style and theme. One bunker looks like a spaceship, another glimmer is like a disco ball. The transformation is stark. Once symbols of war and occupation, they now stand as canvases for creativity and reflection. And while the concrete still cracks beneath the surface, the spirit of what these places have become is anything but forgotten. All right, now let's talk about number 6, Rue Obscure. Beneath the surface of a picturesque fishing village lies a stretch of history most people walk over without noticing. The Rue Obscure, in Villefranche-sur-Mer, isn't really a street in the usual sense, it's more of a tunnel. Built in the 13th century, this covered path was designed as a protected route for soldiers. Back then, it was open to the sky, a narrow defensive corridor. But as the town grew, buildings sprang up above it, and the street disappeared beneath stone and roof. Somehow, it was never demolished. Over time, it was used for storage, livestock, and even as a wine cellar. It's dim, quiet, and a little strange to walk through now. There are no shops or cafes, just walls that echo centuries of footsteps. It's been restored just enough to allow visitors, but hasn't been polished into something artificial. It's still rough around the edges. That's the charm. History didn't skip this place, it just got covered up and kept breathing underground. Number 5. Project HARP Space Gun. In the thick of the Cold War, the US and Canada teamed up for a joint experiment that looked like something out of a sci-fi flick, a massive artillery piece known as the HARP Space Gun, located in Barbados. Just look at that. Short for High Altitude Research Project, it was built to launch test payloads into the upper atmosphere using nothing more than explosive force. Sounds wild, but it worked. In 1963, the gun launched a projectile over 110 miles into the sky, a jaw-dropping feat for what was essentially a modified 16-inch naval cannon. The long-term goal was to fire satellites into orbit or maybe even deploy weapons from the ground. But by 1967, with the Vietnam War escalating, American funding dried up, and the project was quietly shelved. The gun was never dismantled, it's still there, swallowed up by vegetation slowly rusting in place. It's a relic of Cold War ambition, built to defy gravity, now grounded forever. So, always do what you can to achieve your dreams because you never know when things get shift. Number 4. Skrunda, Eins. Rows of Soviet-era apartment blocks stand frozen in place, windows cracked, curtains still clinging to rusted rails. Skrunda 1 isn't a town that faded slowly. It was left all at once. Built in secret during the Cold War, it housed the operators of a radar station monitoring Western activity. Officers, families, engineers, they all lived, worked, and raised children in a place not marked on any map. But after the USSR collapsed in 1991, the silence came fast. Within 2 years, everyone had left. The radar installation survived, repurposed for astronomy, but the town around it died. No demolition, no restoration, just abandonment. Nature has clawed its way through walls, trees pushing through sidewalks. Some homes still hold furniture, uniforms, and dishes. It's like the exit came mid-sentence. If you wander through now, it feels like a Soviet ghost story, one without an ending. There's nothing staged about it, just real lives paused and never resumed. Skrunda 1 remains intact, eerie, and untouched, an entire town shelved by history. Number 3. Ancient Greek helmets. Long before tanks and satellites, military abandonments still happened. One such case dates all the way back to 540 BCE during the naval battle of Eulalia. Greek settlers had established a colony on Corsica, only to be attacked by a combined force of Carthaginians and Etruscans. They won the battle, but barely. With most of their ships destroyed, they couldn't hold the city and were forced to flee, leaving behind whatever couldn't be carried. In 2022, archaeologists uncovered a cluster of helmets in a carefully dug rectangular pit near an ancient temple just outside the former city. They weren't scattered randomly. These were deliberately placed, likely as an offering to the gods. Some believe it was a gesture of gratitude for surviving the battle. Others think it was a prayer for safe passage to wherever they were heading next. Today, those helmets are being studied and restored before they're put on public display, silent reminders of a desperate victory and an honorable retreat. What do you think about them? Well, let us know. Number 2. Juta Tabia. It's not the structure itself that tells the story, but everything it's lived through. The Yellow Bastion in Sarajevo has seen centuries of war, peace, science, and destruction. Originally part of an Austro-Hungarian defensive network, it offered a full view of the city, a perfect lookout during wartime. After World War II, it was transformed into the Kalina Aba Observatory and quickly became one of the country's most advanced astronomy centers. But when the Bosnian War broke out in the 1990s, that ended. Shells ripped through the walls. The equipment was ruined. The building hasn't recovered. There are no astronomers and soldiers, just broken windows and vines curling through empty rooms. Local groups have tried to rally funding to bring it back, but not much has changed. Still, some locals climb to the top to take in the view. The city stretches out below, busy and loud, while the bastion remains quiet. It's not erased from the face of the earth, but paused, like it's still waiting for someone to look up at the stars from here again. Number 1. Buckner Building. Hidden away in the town of Whittier, Alaska, the Buckner Building once felt like a city under one roof. Completed in 1953, it was designed to be a fully self-sufficient military base, complete with a theater, bakery, hospital, gym, bowling alley, even its own radio station. For about 15 years, it functioned like a cold-weather utopia for stationed soldiers and their families. But by the early 60s, its purpose had run dry. Then came the 1964 Alaska earthquake, which wrecked the already fading structure. With crumbling walls, standing water, black mold, and asbestos, it's been abandoned ever since. The military never returned, and neither did restoration efforts. Despite the decay, urban explorers continue to sneak in, drawn by whispers of what life inside once looked like. If no preservation efforts step in soon, the structure is likely to collapse under its own weight. Buckner is a shell of what it was, but still somehow standing, holding on to the echoes of a long-gone military vision. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.